Soaring into battle with victory in my sights. Mesmerized by my grace. Can't blame ya. Soaring into battle with victory in my sights. Soaring into battle with victory in my sights.
Thorns remain, should petals fall.
Soaring into battle with... The winds of battle are picking up. winds of battle are picking up.
Hey, I'm here, big guy. You got a good taste.
Let me show you the art of killing.
What's the key to victory in MCGG? Heroes. Apart from the 3 heroes randomly placed on your chessboard at the start of the game, you can buy or sell heroes in the shop at any time. Heroes are also available during the draft round. Every hero brings unique skills plus 2 powerful traits, role and faction. Combine them wisely to create unstoppable lineups. Heroes cost 1 to 5 gold based on their power level. The stronger the hero, the higher the price. Premium heroes command premium prices. Higher tier heroes are rarer in the shop. Level up your commander to increase your chances of finding these powerful units when you reset the shop. Power is rare. That's what makes it special. There are 2 main ways to power up.
The Shining Star of Erudicio, at your service. The Shining Star of Erudicio, at your service. The Shining Star of Erudicio, at your service. The Shining Star of Erudicio, at your service.
Thorns remain, should petals fall.
The Shining Star of Erudicio. The Shining Star of Erudicio, at your service.
arts, black magic. Yeah, I'm like a bad habit when I pull up. Dealing damage, you ran out of luck. Got nobody on my level here. Up for battle, I don't know no fear. Ain't no stopping, no, ain't no stopping. I got you moving that slow. I was savage when I pull up. I'm a classic, you can't get enough. Get your love to taste the wicked games, raising all the stakes. Oh no, no, no. Take another place, push your limitless. I got no life on it, no nothing, no face. Dark arts, black magic, can handle it, can have it. Feel the power, feel the force. We attack it. Dark arts, black magic. One shot go maximum damage. Feel the power, feel the force. We attack it. Feel the power, feel the force. We attacking. Wanna tap it, wanna trap it, can't have it. That's what's happening. Wanna chase it, wanna catch it. Get ready for the madness. I'ma take a live with this. Follow my live with this. If you put in work, I'll make you what the best believe. Bet you love the taste. Taste the wicked games. Raising all the stakes. I'm not raising. Take a lap of this. Push your limitless. I bet my life on it. No nothing out face. Dark arts, black magic. Can handle it, can have it. Feel the power, feel the force. We attack it. Dark arts, black magic. One shot go maximum damage. Feel the power, feel the force. We attack it. Feel the power, feel the force. We attack it. Clear information, there ain't no going back. Glorious, yeah, we on the right track. The only road that we're heading to is victory. Victory, yeah. Feel the fire as I grant you I wish. Don't fight it, it's worth every risk. Cross your heart, tear it apart. Get into the lightless power. Magic, can handle it, can have it. Feel the power, feel the force. We attack it. Dark arts, black magic. Maximum damage. Feel the power, feel the force. Yeah, we attacking, going on. Give it up to the battle forward. Give it up like I am losing focus. Nothing I won't face, nothing I won't do. You ready for it? Power, feel the force. We attacking. Yeah, I'm like a bad habit.
See that it's actually going to be hidden, just like a regular password. So now let's duplicate this down again. So Alt Shift and down arrow to take a look at our next kind of input. And that is going to be the number input. So let's change the label to number and the type to number. Now using the number input is pretty self-explanatory. We have the option to increase the number inside of this input as well as decrease it, and we can also come in here and type in a custom number, but of course we can't type in any text values, it will not let you. Now let's duplicate this down one more time to look at our last input, and that is going to be the date input. And this one is also pretty self-explanatory. We get this nice UI that allows us to select and choose from a range of dates. And of course, we can also come in here and custom change these values. Now what we're going to be doing next is going through a couple of elements that behave a lot like inputs, but don't actually use the input tag. And I know that sounds pretty confusing, but once I explain it to you, it's all going to make sense. So what we're going to do is duplicate this div down. And now let's say we wanted to create a message input. So one of those big message inputs where people can write you, say, an email. Now, in order to do that, we are not going to be using the input element. What we actually have to do is use the text area element, and we can get rid of all of this weird stuff here. And the first difference you'll notice between the text area and the input is this is actually not a self-closing tag, and we also don't have to add the type attribute. And what you'll notice is if we head back to our page, while these inputs are way too small to write any sort of message in, we can actually change the size of our text area however we please so that we are able to write long-winded email messages inside of this text area. So now let's refresh our page to get our text area back to normal. And now the last input that we are going to be covering is a select element. So let's change this label to select. And in order to get our select element, we're going to remove this text area and then create our select element. And where we typically use a select element on our page is when the user can choose between a couple of different options. So for example, let's say we were having the user choose the size of their clothing on our website. So if the user is choosing the size of their clothes, they have to have options to choose from, right? So what we'd do is for each option that the user can choose, we add an option element inside of our select element. So let me give you some examples. So let's create an option element, and let's say that the first option the user can choose is extra small. So we type in XS, and then let's Alt Shift down arrow to duplicate this down a couple of times and create a couple more options. The second option is going to be S, so small. The third option is going to be medium. The fourth option is going to be large. And now if we head back to our page, we can actually choose between these 4 options. Now, one thing you always want to remember is you want to fill in the value attributes of these options. So our first one gets a value of extra small, our second one gets a value of small, third one medium, and our last one large. And the reason we do this is when the user submits the form and we want to work with the option that the user chose inside of a programming language like JavaScript, this just makes our life doing that a lot easier. So now what I want to talk about next is how we can actually submit a form. So if we head to ASAP Frontend, you'll notice that at the bottom of our form, we have this button, and when we hit this button, our form is submitted and we go ahead and log the user in. So in order to submit our form, all we need to do is add a button to the bottom of our form, and we can have some text that says submit inside of this button. And now if we head back to our page and click this submit button, nothing is actually going to happen. And that is because we don't actually have a programming language like JavaScript to perform some sort of action when the form is submitted. And with that, that's pretty much everything you need to know about HTML forms. But before we move on to our next topic, there is just one last thing that I want to show you. So if we head back to the login form at ASAP Frontend, what you'll notice is that our inputs actually have this sort of gray placeholder text, and whenever we type in some text, it actually disappears. And this honestly looks really good, but the question is, how do we actually get this on our inputs? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Let's scroll up to our first input, so let's say our text input, and all we have to do to get that placeholder text is use the placeholder attribute, and we can type in whatever we want in here, but in this case, let's just say type in your first name. And now if we head back to our page, you can see that we are getting that cool placeholder text. But if we type something in here, it disappears. But again, when the input is empty, the placeholder comes back. So that's just something cool that I wanted to show you. But with that, we are officially finished with forms. So let's head below our form and create a new comment. So control and /. And in here, we are going to type in images because that is the next topic that we are going to cover. In order to use images in HTML, we use the img tag. And what you'll notice is just like an input element, this is a self-closing tag. And what did we do for the input element, which was a self-closing tag? We added a / to the end of it just to keep our code consistent and easier to read. Now, by default, we get two attributes with our image elements. The first one being the src attribute. And this is actually how we tell HTML where to look for our image. And there's actually two ways we can do this. First, we can tell HTML to look externally, so on the internet for our image, or we can tell HTML to search locally within our computer, within our machine for that image. And we are going to start by covering that first method. So let's head back to ASAP frontend, and we're gonna right click on this logo and hit copy image address. And then what we'll do is paste that into this src attribute. And now if we head back to our page, you can see we're getting the ASAP frontend logo as our image. Now let's say we wanted another image from the internet. Let's say we wanted an image of Superman. Well, what we could do is go to Google, search for Superman, click on images, and we can right click and copy image address on any of these images and just paste it directly into this src attribute. And now if we head back to our page, we have Superman appearing as our image. And that is how we get an image from the internet externally. But the question is, how do we get an image that is stored locally on our device? Well, let me teach you how to do this by first installing this image. So let's save image as, and then let's go to our desktop and then go within the HTML crash course folder. And here, let's save this image under the file name Superman. And now if we open up our sidebar, we should be seeing superman.jpg inside of our HTML crash course folder. Now what we need to do in order to get this image displaying on our page is we have to remove all of this stuff here. And we can simply just say that we want to use the Superman.jpg image. And now if we take a look at our live server, you can see that we have the same Superman image appearing on our page. And the reason we can just write Superman.jpg inside of the src attribute and it works is because our Superman image and our index.html file are in the exact same folder on the exact same level. So they're literally in the exact same folder and they are side by side. And because of that, we don't have to do anything extra. We can just type in superman.jpg and it works. But let's say we had this image inside of an images or assets folder. So let's drag and drop this in. Well, what you'll notice is since our image and our index.html file are no longer on the same level, this is not actually going to work anymore. And the reason for that is that HTML by default starts by searching for files on the same level as the current HTML file. So this is what HTML sees right now, and it's searching for a superman.jpg image that's on the same level as this HTML file. So it's looking for this superman.jpg file, but it's not going to find it. It's only going to see this assets folder. It's not going to see any deeper. So what we need to do is specify that we want to go inside of the assets folder, and inside of that, we want to grab superman.jpg. So in the image src, we have to specify that we're first going inside of the assets folder, and then inside of the assets folder, we want to grab the superman.jpg image. And now if we head back to our page, we can now see our image is appearing properly. But let's say we had another folder inside of this assets folder called images. And let's say only in there did we have our Superman image. And on a side note, you can see that VS Code is doing this weird thing that is making it difficult to tell what is going on. So in order to fix that, what we are quickly going to do is click on this top option here, head to File, Preferences and Settings. And in here, we are going to search for compact folders. and make sure that is unchecked. And that is going to set this back to normal and make this easier to understand. So now back to the question at hand. How do we tell HTML that we want to go inside of our assets folder, and then inside of our images folder, and then inside of that, we want to grab our Superman image? Well, I'm actually going to give you a couple of seconds to figure that out for yourself. Try and figure out how to tell HTML that we want to go inside of our assets folder and our images folder and grab our Superman.jpg image. I'll give you a couple of seconds to give that a shot, and once you are done, we can walk through the solution together. Hey, welcome back. Hopefully you managed to find a solution to this problem. So now let's actually take a moment to think about how we can solve this problem. So let's start off by closing our images and our assets folder and searching for our image like HTML would. Well, how would HTML look for our image? Well, it would start by looking through files and folders that are on the same level as index.html. So it's looking through, it's trying to find the assets folder, and bang, it's found its match. So we've found the assets folder. What are we going to do next? Well, we are going to go inside and look for Superman.jpg. So we go within the assets folder and look for Superman.jpg, but this is what HTML sees. All it sees is this images folder. It doesn't see Superman.jpg. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to specify that we want to go inside of the assets folder, inside of the images folder, and only then can we look for Superman.jpg. So we have to say we want to go within the assets folder, and then go within the images folder, and then grab Superman.jpg. And now you can see our image is appearing on our page. So I hope the solution made sense. And those are the two ways we can search for images using the src attribute. We can search for the image locally within our computer, or we can search for the image externally on the internet by copying the image address and just pasting it straight into the src attribute. Now there's one last thing that we have to cover about images, and that is this alt attribute right here. It's not super important, but it's just here for accessibility purposes. So let's say someone is blind and they are using what we call a screen reader. So that's just something that sort of goes through your website and describes the content to the blind person. This alt attribute is where we tell the screen reader what our image is actually about, so that it can correctly describe it to the blind person. So in the alt attribute, we'll just say something like, this is a Superman image, and this is what the screen reader would read out to the blind person. And now that's pretty much it for images. Now we're going to be moving on to our next topic. So let's create a comment using control and /. And the next topic that we are going to cover is going to be buttons. So buttons are pretty simple. All we have to do to create a button is use the button tag. And between these two tags, we can of course write in whatever we want to see inside of our button. So in this example, I wrote click me. And now you can see we have a button that says click me. And what we can actually see here is that images and buttons are actually inline level elements. So they are actually going to be side by side, and they aren't going to start on a new line. And I actually don't like that. I'd like this button to be on its own line. So what I'm going to do is create a div, and then I'm going to place this button inside of this div. And since a div is a block level element, it's going to start this button on a new line. And this is another example of where divs come in really handy in helping us sort of organize and lay out the content on our page. And with that, that is pretty much it for buttons. Now the last thing we are going to be covering is spans. So let's create a new comment, control and /. And in here, let's type in spans. Now, the reason we'd use a span element is, let's say we had a paragraph, and let's say this paragraph said land a job with ASAP frontend. And like I mentioned earlier on in the video, we can actually bold certain text by using the B tag. So if we put ASAP frontend